Okay, hello everyone and welcome to the ScreenSkills Select RTS Scotland Industry Insights session on production office roles in film and TV. My name is Victoria Tracey, Accreditation Programme Manager at ScreenSkills, and today we're going to be delving into production office roles in film and TV with industry practitioners at different stages of their careers, discussing their current roles and previous projects they've worked on. So we'll be hearing from production coordinators, production secretaries, people that are working in ScreenSkills Trainee, finder scheme, in accountancy roles, and also we're going to be hearing from head of production as well. So a real array of different roles that you can do within the production office, which is great. So please note that we actually are recording this session. There's going to be a Q&A towards the end of the session, so please submit your questions that you have via the Q&A feature. It would be helpful if you could mention who the question is for when submitting these. The questions will be put to the panel during the last 15 minutes of the session. So ScreenSkills is the national skills body for the screen industries. We provide targeted support to retain and build a skilled and inclusive workforce, critical to the screen industry's global success. We work across the UK to ensure that film, TV, visual effects, animation and games have the skills and talent they need. We identify skills gaps and shortages across the screen industries, support and quality mark education and training, and offer professional development opportunities in screen. I manage the ScreenSkills Select course endorsement scheme, which endorses and enhances screen courses that develop industry-ready students. By identifying the UK's most industry-focused courses, we enable employers to recruit the best talent. The Royal Television Society for Scotland is an educational charity promoting the art, science and craft of television and schedule informative events all year round on a host of different topics, from their annual Scotland Awards and Student Awards to the prestigious Campbell Swinton Lectures, plus other events relevant to Scotland's television industry, featuring Scottish production teams and programmes, all tackling issues impacting television production and broadcast in Scotland. I sit on the RTS Scotland committee, and also we have an events committee, and we obviously develop these events for you. So we really hope you have a lovely time listening to this event. So I'm going to hand you over to Kate Cotter. Kate Cotter is Programme Leader for the BA Hons Broadcast Production, TV and Radio course at the University of the West of Scotland. And Kate will be facilitating this session and will introduce you to each of the industry speakers. So I really hope you enjoy this session.
Thank you very much, Victoria. What a fantastic introduction to the event today. Thank you so much for all of those of you who are attending. We can't actually see you, but we will be seeing your questions coming up later in the Q&A chat. So just to give you a little brief overview of the event today, as Victoria said, I'm a programme leader for a broadcast course in Scotland at University of West of Scotland. But the panel here today are from all over the UK. And we're going to give you kind of a broader sense of how the production side of things work. So the session is called the production office, but I think we'll find that within that there's a lot of people who also leave the office, and we'll talk about the variety of the roles involved in production. Before I was a programme leader, I worked in the broadcast industry and television, mainly as a freelancer, producer, director, but one of my very first jobs was also in a production office as a production assistant and a production coordinator. So I'm always very grateful and appreciative of the importance and significance of all the roles of people in the production office. I think the plan for the session today, I'm sure there's a variety of people have joined us, students, recent graduates, lecturers, people from various courses and organisational bodies. So welcome to all of you. I hope there'll be something in this for everybody. I think the panel themselves, we're all going to learn a lot about what it's like at the moment for people as well coming into the industry. So we're mainly going to look at the key roles in the production office, and we've got a lovely variety of people in the panel here who are doing some of those roles currently, and indeed have previously done other roles that are being represented here. So roughly it's going to be about 45 minutes of a chat with the panel. And then we'll open up to a Q&A, as Victoria said earlier. And during that Q&A, we'll be answering your questions, but also our ScreenSkills colleagues will be online signposting to relevant resources from ScreenSkills, etc. Okay, so with no further ado, I'm going to do a brief intro to the panel in the order that I've written it down, as opposed to the order you can see them. And then we'll go around and each of them will give you a bit of a longer context and introduction to themselves. So I'm joined by, thank you so much, Sandy Robertson, BBC Studios Head of Production for Factual Entertainment and Events Scotland. Isha Krishnan, production coordinator at Red Sky Productions. Marc Harvey, production secretary at Friel Kean Films, currently on Money for Nothing. Fola Abdul, freelance production management assistant, also freelance production secretary, can tell us about those differences of roles. And Robyn Hunter, ScreenSkills, high-end TV accountancy trainee. So thank you so much to my panel. Have I included everybody? Haven't left anybody out? Good, good. Okay, so we will go then to kind of set the scene a little bit, and we'll go around the panel and find out a bit about what they're currently doing, what their current role is, what it means, and what it means in the place that they're currently doing it. Can I start with Sandy? Hi, Sandy.
Hi, Kate. Thank you. So I'm Sandy. I'm the head of production at BBC Studios Fact Ent in Glasgow. So I look after the Fact Ent production management team and make sure that all our productions that we're delivering all happen safely and on time and on budget. I've been here since August, July, August. Previously, I've been at smaller independent companies. I've been working in the industry for well over 20 plus years, initially starting in the editorial and then moved across into production management.
And could you tell us what head of production means? What does that job title mean?
Good question. I guess I'm still learning that. Every day is a learning day, I always say. But I think a big part of my job is listening. So listening to the teams, firefighting, but really just, I think, being a safe person to listen to people, to offer advice, not necessarily come up with the ideas and solutions, but to listen to the teams and then to either offer a different viewpoint or to confirm that, yeah, they are on the right path to doing what they think is the right thing to do.
And would that mean for head of production that you are head of all the productions that are happening at the same time? So different people are managing them and they come to you, or can you give us a bit?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so I look after the Fact Ent slate. So on our slate here in Glasgow, we've got Dragon's Den, we've got Points of View, Amazing Hotels, and a few other different shows. So for each of those ones, I have a production manager that looks after the production. And then depending on the size of the commission, there might be a production secretary or a coordinator, there might be a junior production manager, very much depends on the size of the production. But I'm this kind of very small person that just kind of oversees lots of different things happening, as opposed to really getting into the minutiae of it all.
But that's brilliant, I suppose, because at every stage of the process, people have a mentor or somebody to turn to, because some of the decisions people are making are quite big. Sometimes they're under time pressure and they need somebody to come to for that other perspective. Does the head of production have anything to do with budgets? Something we need to ask you.
Always. So I don't manage the budgets, but one of my roles would be very much being there at the very beginning of production, so in the development phase. I'd work very, very closely with the editorial teams, coming up with the ideas and then working out and making sure that the idea that they're coming up with works to the budget that the broadcaster is going to give us. So very much it's a creative process working alongside the creative editorial team. But I don't actually manage the budgets on a day-to-day. So for like the Dragon's Den, we then got an amazing team that come in and they manage that day-to-day.
That's really useful. And one more question to ask at the moment, and obviously a lot of this will come out in the conversation, but just because you're in that role, and it's really interesting for people to know what that is. How does it work in terms of sharing the BBC Studio spaces? Are you using ones just in Glasgow? Or are you looking elsewhere in the UK? Obviously, Dragon's Den isn't filmed up here, is that correct? Or how does that work?
The actual studio for filming?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we currently film Dragon's Den in Manchester, but it very much depends on the production. So for Dragon's Den, you'll understand that there's lots of dragons, there's lots of people involved in that show, and they're all over the UK. So up to date, it's work that we've been in a kind of a more central location. But, you know, I think with most programs, Amazing Hotels, we film all over the UK. So it's very much dependent on the production and the commission that we've got. You know, our base is in Glasgow, our teams are in Glasgow. So we're very much within the Scotland industry in terms of jobs, which is amazing in that pipeline of talent. But depending on what we're filming, we've been all across the UK. And actually, for Amazing Hotels, we're all across the world really filming as well, which is exciting.
Which is exciting. It's a gorgeous series to watch. It's beautiful. Thank you so much, Sandy. So Aisha, I'm going to come to you next. You're currently at Red Sky Productions, is that right? Can you tell us a little bit about what your current job includes, or what's in that role of production coordinator?
Hello. I'm Isha. I'm the production coordinator at Red Sky. I don't fully understand what my role is. It can be really varied. You can go from being the office runner one day to on the phone to Enterprise Rent-A-Car, arguing with them because your hire car is 2 days late. And then you can go from arguing to Enterprise Rent-A-Car to the hotel saying that the booking isn't there for all the crew. And it can be really intense, but then it goes back to office runner and you're just helping manage diaries and you're helping order toilet roll and is there enough tea and coffee in the cupboards? Especially with me being at Red Sky, I am the most junior member of staff, so I do get a lot of the office runner roles. But yeah, coordinating is very diverse, which I like because I get bored easy. So it's good to have that variety.
It sounds to me like all of those roles are very important. We all learned during lockdown the importance of a good supply of toilet rolls. So I suppose what you're the picture you're painting is that if you're at an independent production company, that role can really vary. But also that there are times when it's really, really busy and then times when it's maybe you can reflect on what you've done on a production. Would you find that you're on more than one production at the same time?
Yes, so I'm really lucky. I'm staff, so I'm not freelance. So I think being staff, you tend to get a lot more responsibility because I'm there all the time. So if the production secretary or the production coordinator on another production has left because their contract has ended, then and they need someone to help, I get to help out. And because I'm there all the time, I'm privy to those conversations that are happening in the office. So I'm like 30% in the know, and then I can quickly help out over there and quickly help out on the paperwork on that other production, and then go back to help with that other production, and then work on my production. You kind of get to see everything, which is really good. Lots of variety.
That sounds really great, and that there's a kind of a learning opportunity from working with the people who are doing those roles as well. And could you just tell us, maybe name something you have worked on, a particular production, and what you did on that production?
So the most recent production I've just finished is Scotland's Greatest Escape Series 2. So similar in a way to Amazing Hotels, but it's specifically in Scotland. We travel around the country looking at different Airbnbs and hotels and huts and pods and camping sites. And we have a panel of judges and they decide which one is Scotland's Greatest Escape. It actually transmits tomorrow, so we're all very excited. 8 o'clock. Please watch it. So for that, I was the junior coordinator. So I was helping. We had a coordinator on that and my production manager, and just helping with the schedule and the travel and the accommodation, because travel is difficult at the best of times, but when you're coming towards the end of the summer season and you've got the really bad weather, train strikes, snow, weather warnings, it becomes an even bigger issue. So that was very complicated. But I really enjoyed the scheduling part of it and the problem solving of, we need to get this person to Fort William, but all the trains are cancelled and the buses aren't running and they don't drive. Go. So then you just have to make it work, and that's fun.
That sounds great. There's a lot of use of the word fun in your description of your job, which is fantastic. Thanks so much. I'm going to jump to Marc next. Hi, Marc. So tell us a bit about your current job role at Friel Kean Films, please.
So I am, a lot of what I'm about to say is going to echo exactly what Isha said, so I kind of wish I went first now, but it's fine. She can steal my answer, that's absolutely fine. Yeah, so I am production secretary, so really my job is basically just to kind of do anything and everything I can to help the production team, which is my production manager and my production executive, as well as the team as a whole, with basically anything that crops up. Like Isha said, it could be shuttle and drive the hard drives to the edit. It can be doing the call sheets. It can be phoning Enterprise. And I'm going to say this right now: if you do this job, you will learn to hate Enterprise with the might of 1,000 suns. It's anyway. But yeah, really just doing anything and everything in the production office to make sure that the production and the show goes along smoothly. I'm currently working on Money for Nothing, which is a daytime show, so it's quite interesting. Is it like when I was in uni and stuff, you're taught that the stages are pre-production, production, post-production, but with a daytime show, like season 16 has just been delivered, season 17 is in production, season 18 is in pre-production, and it's like you're basically doing all three at the one time, and so every day is different. So you can be dealing with stuff for the edit one day, and then you can be setting up shoots the next, and then you can be dealing with a broken down car or something that's happened with the team that are out filming. So a lot of firefighting goes on, but it is really fun. It is enjoyable. And also, I'm now working on a show about Berlin prison, so that's a bit of a tonal shift. So one day I'm talking about shelves and couches that are getting upcycled at recycling centres, and then the next day I'm talking about how long this guy's been in jail for murder, etc., etc. So it's no 2 days are the same, and it is quite interesting.
Well, that's a lovely summary of your role. Thanks, Marc. I feel guilty as the person taught you in university that I neglected to mention several might be in production at the same time.
I didn't want to say anything, but yeah, I don't want to say anything.
So I just want to jump in on something you've said, which is that Isha said a lot of what you were saying. What would we say, would you think there might be, and later I'm going to ask Sandy to give us an oversight of that as well. What would you say are the differences between being a production coordinator and being a production secretary, Marc?
Well, I can't currently yet speak to being a production coordinator, but my understanding, I feel like it's maybe just a wee bit more responsibility, maybe more control over.
Sorry, is that the coordinator has more responsibility?
Yeah. So like I would say production secretary is more or less the first sort of rung on the ladder of when you're working in production, and then you kind of move up to production coordinator, production manager. They throw like junior and senior and stuff in there to bridge the gap sometimes, but really production secretary is kind of your first step, and then as you go up, production coordinator might have more say over maybe more budget things. Like I'll be honest, I know nothing about the budget on our production. I know there is one, and I know roughly what it is and what we can spend and what we can't, but that's as far as my knowledge on that goes. But yeah, I think it's really just more responsibility and some more important tasks as it goes up.
Thank you. That's great. We'll come back to that later in the chat. And thanks for that, Marc. So no further ado, I'm going to come on to Fola. Hi, Fola. Do you want to tell us a bit about your current role, or what you're just about to jump into next, I think, or what you did last? You could choose one of those.
Right, okay, what I did last. I've had quite a number of different production management assistant roles. I started off on a children's program called Saturday Mashup. It was a live program that went out on the Saturday Mashup. We did external, live broadcasts as well as within. As an assistant manager production person on that one, basically I was working as a runner, I was booking transport. Again, enterprise can be tasking, but we won't go there. Arranging for quotes to be brought in terms of food for the Saturday crew. Moving from that on to points of view, that was fun. There was not as much running around, but more along the lines of helping the editorial team. That was fantastic. I got to learn a lot of things in terms of due diligence, also learning new software that I was not party to before in regards to the one I was doing before. So moving on to Dragon's Den, which was an eye-opener in so many ways. In terms of, I worked more alongside with the editorial team. So I was able to use new apps such as Trent, finding out about Fred, and I was just like, oh my, excuse my language, God, this is fantastic. I guess what I'm trying to say is it's always something new. And whenever there's a need, you as a production management assistant or production secretary, whichever title you want to go for, you are asked to step into that, not necessarily taking just to help, rather than to be given jobs that could be over your head, let's say. But there's always someone there to give you the information you require, as long as you ask the questions. And if you're not sure, ask and ask again until you're clear about what is needed. I'd say I've enjoyed every moment of being in the industry. I've only been in it for 2 years and 2 months with no background whatsoever in film and TV. The only thing I've ever done is been an essay for 6 years prior to that. So it's been amazing.
But I think what sounds like you've been having a really interesting, varied career so far in the industry, but also that your transferable skills from previous roles and other things you've done in life all come in really handy. And you know, that it means it gives you that wee confidence boost to take on roles. Can I just ask before I move on to Robyn, can I just ask you, you mentioned Saturday Mashup, and I'm just trying to get a sense of people when we talk about the production office. Did you go on location? Did you go on set on the Saturdays and go to the live?
So we did the live set, so that was in the studio, but we also had location shoots. So one of the things I was interested in is being able to go with the producer director, the sound man, as well as the cameraman. And then obviously would have contributors or talent. And that way I was able to find out more about all the different equipment that was needed. Being able to also see how a shoot is created. I mean, obviously I'm not there for when the director sits down and then edits the clip itself, but I saw what was being filmed, what could be a whole day in terms of filming, now condensed down to no more than maybe a couple of minutes. And it's just fascinating. It's really fascinating. So in that respect, I think when I was doing that, I was a runner. I was a talent coordinator in terms of trying to get people to the right place at the right time, and also feeding back information back to the base unit, just in case there's issues. So that's the sort of thing.
Thanks so much, Fola. We'll come back later on and talk about transferable skills, and also that idea of when you go out on location, what it translates for the next time you're booking something or any of those things back in the office, as it were. So Robyn, thank you so much. You've got your job title up here. It's fantastic. It's very useful. For anyone who can't see that, it says Robyn Hunter, ScreenSkills 2023-24 accounts trainee. Welcome, Robyn. Could you tell us a bit about your current role or things you've been doing within that capacity?
I'd like to talk about my last job because I think that's more relevant to what we're doing here. So I was very fortunate to be I was chosen for the Trainee Finder program, and we started on 1st of April and it runs until the 31st of March. And I got chosen to go work on a placement for ITV. It was a period drama filming in North London. And I ended up managing all of accounts payable, so paying all the bills. Our budget for 4 hours of telly was £9 million. And we had 86 sets. So no, it was massive, but it was the most amazing experience. Absolutely loved it. We were working, like everything was being filmed either in studios near Enfield, and then we went on location. We filmed around Hampstead and in Dorchester. And what happens in accounts, which is different to, I guess, the way people normally think of accounts, is your normal corporate account, shall we say, is on a monthly basis, whereas in production it's week to week. And then when you're actually on, like when the shoot's going on, that's your busiest time because you've got urgent payments. So sometimes some of the set deck stuff needs to be paid for before it needs to be collected. And normally the weekly terms, you tend to have to process payments within a week. So the volumes are monumental. Like every week, one payment run can be $500,000. And then the other $500,000 is payroll, paying all the crew. So it's crazy money. My background's in news. And we always had zero budgets working in news. So I'm on the complete opposite end of the scale now.
That's a really great overview. Thank you so much. And again, as you've said, you know, the word accounts, people don't necessarily appreciate or understand that often means very much being there with the production, the crew. side of things and actually working practically very close to people like that. Okay, so I think we've had a nice introduction to a real variety of productions and a real variety of roles and locations. I think what there's questions starting to come in, but we're not going to come to those yet. We're just going to kind of talk through a few other bits and pieces before we do that. Just going back to the idea of roles again, Sandy, I'm just going to back up on that idea of production manager assistant, production secretary, production coordinator. Because you're perhaps involved in overseeing all of these, can you tell us a little bit about that structure to an audience who are listening today who are maybe hoping to enter the production office? Where are they trying to go?
So a production secretary and a production manager's assistant are kind of the same thing. A PMA is what we call the production manager assistant. That's very much sort of a BBC term, or a kind of more of a studio when you are doing kind of proper it's quite old school, kind of. It's not really kind of referred to anymore, other than internal BBC, but they're very much the same, and they're very much entry level. So it would be booking things like booking travel, booking accommodation. And I always look at it that the person would be quite green. You know, I would expect to be telling them what they need to do and how to do it. And very much the production coordinator or the production manager or myself or whoever's there to help them, they're very much there, they're hands-on, they're there to help that individual. When they're then stepping up to be a production coordinator, I would then like to see a bit more initiative. So that person would then be coming and saying, okay, shall I do this? Or, you know, I'm going to look ahead and do this. So that's more, they've got a bit more of an understanding of the role, other things that need done. So as well as logistics, it'd also then be looking maybe at hiring kit for people, just a bit more responsibility, and probably starting to understand that obviously things cost money. They might be given a pot of money for their budget, for accommodation or for travel. So understanding kind of how that works, what allowances they might have for accommodation or for travel. So it's a bit more understanding of the process and trying to kind of show a bit more initiative, not always necessarily asking for advice. And also probably then if they are asking a question, it's maybe then coming to the production manager and just saying, you know, how you know, this has come up. What do you think I should do? I'm thinking I should do this, as opposed to just, you solve this for me. But I think production secretary and PMA is very much entry level, and you can come in very, very green, and that is expected, and that's okay.
Thank you very much. That's really useful. What I was going to do is, because I kind of appreciate that from our panel, we haven't really mentioned it. You've all come into industry at very different points. I think you mentioned that, Fola, having done something previously, and I think some people here have come in from different trainee schemes and opportunities. So I was just going to go around that and just talk about, how did you get into your role originally, or how did you come to this originally, and what did you find useful? What did you bring with you that you found was actually useful? Because sometimes it can be from something completely different. Maybe you've been, I don't know, working with children, or, you know, doing phone calls in a call center. All those things are useful. So I'm going to just jump to Marc to start with for that one. How did you get into the industry originally? What was your entry point?
So I did 4 years at City Glasgow College. So I did the HNC, the HND, and then the BA, where I had a wonderful lecturer. So I did that for 4 years, and then at the end, I finished university in 2020, and the hope was obviously get out, get jobs, and go on. But obviously, I don't need to tell anyone 2020 wasn't the best time of the best time to finish uni, so kind of had to go about a year without any work, like most of the world. And then I ended up doing a trainee course called RAD, which is with the TRC. So that was a sort of 8-month course where I was at a company called Halo, and I was there like trainee production assistant, which is basically just production secretary. Like we said, it's just another name for the same sort of job. But with that, I was also like a runner. I was a runner for a while as well on various different shows, which kind of gave me a good idea. It's really good to kind of know what it's like out on location when you're making these, like when you're making plans, and you know, when you're making plans for people, if you've been out on location, you've been out filming, you kind of know what works and what doesn't, and what people like and what people don't. So that helps. So did the 8 months there. Halo kept me on as a production secretary to work on one of their shows, and then it's just been kind of bouncing from a couple of different companies until I'm where I am just now.
Okay, that's great. So RAD is an 8-month trainee scheme where you're placed with a independent TV production company and paid to stay with them. And during that time, they put you to work on various different things they're doing. Is that right? Okay. So
Yeah.
that's one of the schemes that's out there. Thank you so much. Fola, could you maybe, I'm going to jump to you next. How did you arrive into this role, into the industry?
I used to work in market research, and one of the ladies that was in my team, I used to manage her. She was a university student, half Korean, half Glaswegian. And one day we were just talking, and she said that this is what I do. I'm a supporting artist. I'm like, what is that? Turns out to be an extra. Then she says along the lines of, they are looking for Black people. This is around Outlander time, by the way. And I was like, do you know how ominous that sounds? Not only that, Glasgow city centre, throw a stone, you'll be able to pick quite a few Black people. From that, went into it, enjoyed it immensely. Noticed that there was a lot of diversity in front of the camera, but barely any at the back of it. Got to know a few of the crew, really, really would love to try it out, just as a runner initially. It took forever. Some people would turn around to me and say, go back to university or spend £400 and do a production course. And then I met this lady, makeup lady, somewhere in Edinburgh, who said to me, that's a whole lot of kerfuffle. Just keep on asking. Someone will take a chance on you. And started doing that. Ended up on Canon Peary as a crowd runner. From there, moved on to Princess Mirabelle, which is a BBC drama production, children's production. And on that, I was a studio runner. Moving on to production runner, which I think was more suitable for me. And met the production manager there, who then offered me a possibility of going into production. And at the time, I wasn't sure. I'm like, not so sure. I'd like to try some more different roles. And then in December, I get a call back from her, and she's like, would you like to be a costume runner? And I'm like, God, of course I do. And then they came back within a couple of days and said, would you like to actually be go on to becoming a production management assistant, i.e. within the BBC? And that they can get some training for me. And I was like, you know what, this is the second time, if not the third time I've met this lady. Each time she's offered me, and I've always said no. And I've been around, I've done a few other roles, and I said, you know what, I'm going to try this. And it was daunting for the first 2 or 3 months in that I had no background in it. It was at the beginning, it was around 2022, obviously when it was COVID. So everything, you had to be about 2 meters away from each other. It was always mirrored screens, which I don't do very well with. But it has been amazing since, because like I said, from once I was able to get my head around what needs to be done and have a list of what my duties were, I was then able to grasp and I would say move up in terms of my knowledge to the point of where I am now. I will say Saturday Mashup for me was the baptism of fire in terms of I learned everything. I was covering every single role there you could cover, from being a tea lady to being a welfare person to being a book and travel, arranging arranging equipment, kit, props, just everything. It's just been amazing in that respect. I should say my background is in science. Had nothing whatsoever to do with film, but the skills I learned in that, as well as finance and in IT, has helped in this area in terms of knowledge and being able to move on. So yes. That's
brilliant. Thanks, Paul. I think what I'm hearing from you and from Marc is the sense of, even if it's the wrong time in the world and things are going on, things will always be in production in some shape or form, and you both use the word leap in and kind of getting stuck in. That's fantastic. Thank you so much. What about yourself, Robyn? Do you want to tell us? You're obviously also jumped into a trainee scheme.
So I mean, I've always been good at numbers. I studied economics and history and politics. So but I actually used to be a journalist and a news producer, mostly for BBC Africa. And I used to work along the Swahili coast from Somalia down to northern Mozambique. And I guess, strangely enough, when you've worked in like very high pressure environments and war zones like I did, but the pressure is intense, and you really have to be part of a team, and you have to like all pull together. And I think that's been the biggest like training for me, because even though there's no danger now, but you still, it's very, very fast environment. Everything has to be perfect and correct, and you have to be accurate, but you have to work quickly and you have to meet deadlines. And so no, all of that has worked really well for me. And like I always used to have to manage budgets and schedule programs and things like that. So no, and I love it, because the other thing about working in accounts is that everyone has to be nice to you because you pay the bills.
This is very true. A friend of mine is a production accountant, or was on Game of Thrones for many years, and she has great stories about famous actors that we know coming in looking for cash, things like that. Thank you so much. So again, what you're bringing to us is that sense of resilience, bringing all your skills that you have, your practical skills, but also just not being afraid to jump in and try something new. That's fantastic. What about yourself, Sandy? Tell us how you got into. You mentioned earlier you started an editorial. How did you come in? How did your pathway go?
So initially I was working in music publishing, and then I very quickly was getting quite bored of that, and it was killing my love of music. And then accidentally somebody said they were going for a runner's position at a company in Aberdeen. So I found out more information about that job and found out that a big part of the running job in that company was also to write the Beechgrove Garden fact sheet. And as I had a publishing degree, I thought, wait a minute, this seems a bit too good to be true. So I went for the interview, and yeah, as they said, it was very much about initially doing that fact sheet. And I just thought it sounded amazing, and luckily I got the job. So I started off doing the fact sheet as well as learning about other bits of the production process. And it was a very small company at the time, so it was very much hands-on on the job, learning all the different roles. And just naturally, I enjoyed all the editorial side, but also like the production management too. So I was kind of a one-man band in a lot of ways there, doing bits and pieces, but eventually found my way into production management.
That's brilliant. I love that. That's a totally different journey. And I think that's something else we have to remind ourselves, that, all of the courses, and myself included, that are, taught at colleges and universities, they are one way in, but they are not the only way into this. People can come into this from all different backgrounds and skill sets. Last but not least, Isha, thank you so much. You've been waiting. Tell us about your pathway. How did you come into what you're doing just now?
So actually the same way as Marc. We were on the same rad trainee scheme. I was so desperate for a job in TV. I was going to take any role I could get. I didn't know anyone in the industry. But the good thing about the rad scheme is that you don't need to have any experience. The whole point is to get people from different backgrounds and different places of work into TV, because everyone brings their own set of skills and they're all very useful. So I interviewed with Red Sky, and they were looking for a production assistant, but I had no idea what a production assistant was. I didn't fully understand the role. Loads of information about runners, researchers, casting, but I didn't fully understand the production assistant role. And I said to the head of production at the time at Red Sky, I'm just really desperate for a job in TV. I will do absolutely anything. I really, really want it. I really want it. Almost begging, but in a really classy way, because I got the job. So that was really good. And turns out I love it. I love production because I like my home comforts of being in the office and being able to go home and being able to get my nails done. It sounds silly, but I like my home comforts. And being a researcher, when you're out on location a lot, it's fun. I love being on location, but I like to come home at the end of the day, and I like to be able to eat my dinner and have my routine and be in bed by 10:30. And being in production gives me that kind of structure, but I still get the adrenaline rush of fighting fires here and fighting fires there. So yeah, but yeah, I was working in retail, I was working in a soft play, I worked at a football stadium. It has absolutely nothing to do with TV at all.
But at the same time, probably, again, if you've worked in a football stadium, you've got a sense of events and crowds and deadlines and things happening live and all of those kind of aspects. And I'm sure lots of skills from working in soft play are very relevant when you're corralling people in productions as well and listening to their needs and meeting their needs. Thank you so much. So I think one thing you've mentioned, Isha, actually was you talked about when it's when you're not kind of live in production in those weeks of filming, that you also sometimes get involved in other areas. So I kind of wanted to bring us to that bit where we talk about the life cycle of a production. And I think Marc touched on that a little bit as well, that sometimes he's in pre for one, something else in production, something else is in post. So I just wanted to get a sense of people in the production office's involvement in the bigger cycle, when there are those periods where some things haven't been greenlit, some things are possibly just getting ready for shoots, some things are in post, where people in the production office role fit into that. I might come back to you first on that, Sandy, if that's okay. And then if anyone else wants to jump in panel, I think we'll just do that a little bit because you've all had a different experience of that cycle of a production.
I would say every schedule is different because some schedules are very linear. There's very much a beginning, the pre-production, and there's the middle, which is the production, then there's the end, the post, and that's what we call a nice streamlined production schedule. But more often than not, it is, as Marc described, you've started prep somewhere, you're in post with another shoot, we've maybe got 8 shows in a series, and they're all at different stages, or as Marc said as well, multiple series of the same show. But the beauty with the production management is generally you're one of the very first people brought into production. So you're there right at the very beginning to help get everyone set up. You're there obviously during the production period because you're obviously then helping everyone get to where they need to be and getting everything set up. And then during post, the production coordinator role, production manager, you're very much then overseeing the post, the schedules there, and then doing all the post-production paperwork, which is the paperwork you have to do at the end when we finish production that gets delivered with our file or tape to the broadcaster. So you're very much involved in every step of the process, which is great.
That's really useful. Thank you very much. Looking at the rest of the panel here, obviously you've had different perspectives on different parts of that. What have you been particularly drawn to? What's would you say, if I was going to say, what's your best day experience of being in an office? Because, you know, it can be, we don't know what's going to happen any one day. If you wanted to work through, so for example, Isha, I'll come to you first, and then if the rest you could think about your best day, what's been a really great day that you loved? Maybe it started off dreadfully and it got better, or maybe it was just, you thought, this is it, this is what I want to do with my life. Isha, do you want to just tell me a little bit about, because you've mentioned the fact that you've kind of been involved in post as well. How have you experienced that, being involved in the different parts of the schedule? Have you learnt equally from those, or how has that been for you?
Yes, every part of the schedule, pre and like being in production and then post, they're all very different. So I find pre-production is okay. I much prefer the rush of being in production, I can't lie. Pre is very much kind of gathering your thoughts and organizing your folders and just being as prepared as possible to help your future self come into production. And it can be like you're just, it's so much to do, but I love that feeling, and that is my favorite because you've got this person needs to speak to you, this person needs to speak to you, but then you've got to just put a brave face on and just get it done. And you have no other choice. You have to get it done. It's that constant, there's a constant deadline. You have to get everything done in a timely manner. You can't be sending a call sheet out at 9 o'clock at night because no one's going to read it at 9 o'clock at night because they start work at 6:30 the next day. They'll probably be in bed. So you've got that constant deadline to just be better and constantly push. And then post is nice because you've just had that mad rush of deadline. And then you come into post and you're like, oh, breathe. You can chase release forms. You can take your time and reconcile all the floats and reconcile all the credit cards and make everything neat and tidy. And then you get paperwork, and I love a bit of paperwork. I think I'm really good at paperwork. It's so much fun. It's very methodical because in production, sometimes your to-do list changes 4 or 5 times, whereas you come to post and you do your post-production paperwork. Tick, 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 and then you're finished. And it's very methodical. So you get a good range of everything. But yeah, I think post-production and production, my favorite bits.
That was a great answer. Thank you very much, Isha. Yeah, we're getting a real sense of you of how varied the role is, but also that important that sometimes organization is about reacting to what's happening, but sometimes organization is about making sure the compliance and the paperwork and those things are in the way they should be to pass on as well. What about yourself, Robyn? Tell me about your best day, something that gave you that buzz of I love this job, or maybe not.
So my best days are always when we're shooting on location, and normally, well, so far, not that I've been in this for that long, but I like it when something like there's mad disaster and it's like, oh no, what are we going to do?
I'm looking for specific mad disasters here, folks. I'm looking for specifics.
I can't really talk about the specifics because it hasn't been broadcast yet, and that's the other thing about working on like these kind of shows, is that you have to sign NDAs and you're not allowed to, everything's so secretive, which is really weird, but you have to get used to it. And but yeah, that's just part of it. But no, I just like being like, when set deck and location and all of them, they have all these problems, and invariably money is the source of it, but in the same way money can solve everything. And so if you know how to juggle things about and follow all the different approvals and procedures so that they don't realize all the complications, and then you can just say, here's your remittance, give it to the vendor or give it to the location, and then everything's calm.
So much. That's brilliant. Thanks, Robyn. Okay, best day, Marc.
Do we mean like best day of the week or best day ever in the job?
Best day ever in the job is good. Let's go with that.
My best day ever in the job is actually really, really sad now that I'm about to say it out loud. But basically, one of my jobs, like Isha mentioned, is basically to get all the release forms for like each series sorted. And with my show, there's 20 episodes in a season, and there's maybe about 4 or 5 people every episode. So there's quite a lot of release forms to chase up and things. And we had this is a production buzzword, but we had this really nice spreadsheet that we had to track all of them, and there was one left. There was one that I was chasing for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks, and I could not get a hold of this woman. And I was actually getting quite alarmed that something might happen to her, that I might not be able to get a hold of her. But luckily, I got a phone call, I think it was about 2 weeks ago. She phoned going, "Oh, I'm really sorry, I've not been in touch. I've been in Australia and the release form is in the post and it's on its way to you right now." So I finally, a couple of days later, I've got it through the post and got to sign off on all the release forms and get it gone. And it was just like this massive weight off your shoulders, because it's just been something that you've been working on for weeks and weeks and weeks. And then it's just, when it's done, it's just that amazing sort of feeling of accomplishment. And then you get to kind of move on and then start getting them for the next season. Because like I said, the train never stops. So you have that moment of triumph and joy, and then you realise that all you've actually done is gone from 60 complete release forms to 0, and you have to start all over again. But you enjoy that moment. You enjoy that moment of triumph, and when you can. But yeah, that's probably my favourite day so far.
That's great. I love that. I mean, that's a really good insight into the role, I think. Thank you so much. What about yourself, Fola?
My one is really weird. It's to do with the heights of vans. So we had a location shoot.
Sorry, it was to do with what? Sorry.
The height of a van.
Okay.
Realized that I really wanted to stick with this. It was planning a location shoot. It was I think it was on a Friday. We were sending the 2 vans down to London. We were booking the car parking space for them in a multi-story building. And we'd almost finished everything else. And then all of a sudden, something just popped into my head. Have we checked the size, the height restrictions in terms of the where the van would go through? That then got us calling Enterprise, who weren't aware of what the height of their vans were. Ended up calling the car park place, finding information there, going back to Enterprise, then taking 2 hours to come back and say, actually, It's higher than the actual car park it was going to be, we had booked for them. And then spending another 3-4 hours trying to find a car park around that surrounding area in London for them to be able to park in. We had to move the hotels as well because obviously it was too far away. But it was amazing. For me, it was amazing. I loved every moment of it. And that's when I said, great, I love this. It's always different every single day. But that one was that cemented my belief that I was on the right path.
Wow, these are great answers. I'm loving these. You've actually just given me a flashback to when I worked in Glasgow at Turn Television, and Sandy was a production manager there at the time, and we had a van hired from, I think it was Enterprise, was very close by to Turn Television. Is that right, Sandy? And we had hired a production van, and we went to collect it. And it's a very busy part of the city centre of Glasgow, and we had just driven out of the car park where Enterprise keep their vans. And a bus came out of its bus lane and clipped our side mirror off and just kept going, and our side mirror fell on the road. We just hired it about 20 minutes. We'd had it in our possession, and I had to phone, and that's where you really, I think people in production really appreciate that calm voice like Sandy at the end of a line going, it's okay, we'll sort it, we'll fix it. Because sometimes it's hard to translate what's happening, and that's where you need somebody like you, Fola, enterprisingly fixing something that people haven't even anticipated as a problem yet. Sandy, tell us about your best day, or a best day.
I think my best days are day one of production, when all the teams start and you just have this amazing energy of people, all these fresh faces. And it's like, yes, we've got here, and just everyone's excitement, everyone's can-do attitude, getting to know everybody. And to me, that's what it's all about, meeting new people. And I just love the feeling of when you've got a busy production office.
That is a lovely answer as well, because it's a team, isn't it? And I think that's something today you've all touched on, is that you're very much part of a team. And these are people that you will work with, perhaps again, somewhere else in another manifestation of a production team, but you're getting to work with other people and getting to know them and sharing that common passion and interest of getting things done. I'm just going to, I think we're going to come to the questions quite soon. Those of you who are sending questions, and thank you so much. We're appreciating those. I can see them popping up, and I'll put those to the panel in a few minutes. We're nearly there. I just wanted to ask a little bit about, because a lot of the questions seem to be around this as well, kind of a generic answer at the moment, is about getting into production roles, and how people are hired and the challenges of getting into the industry. And just to come to each of the panelists about your kind of message or experience of how do you go about, and I appreciate some of you are now staff in places, but you haven't always been. Tell us about that, getting into jobs. How do you typically get into your particular role, would you say, is your insight or experience or tip into that process? So for example, if people out there are preparing CVs or making choices about courses or where to live, what would your advice be, Isha?
So there's actually a whole bunch of Facebook groups out there that it sounds silly, but there's a whole bunch of Facebook groups that production actually post in and say, we need this, we need this person, this person, this person, this is the shoot, these are the dates, this is the best email address to get me on, send me your CV. That's where a lot of people post their jobs. So there's a Scottish one called TV Talent Scotland. That's probably the main one, and a lot of people post their CVs in there, so you can see what CVs look like for your role, for other people's roles. Just like you can have a read, pick out buzzwords. It's just a really great place for people to express their concerns, ask questions. I mean, Scotland's small, then the TV community is smaller, so it's really nice. So that's a great place. And then when you join one, you join like a whole other bunches pop up. There's like a runner one, there's like hair and makeup, whole bunch. I really recommend looking there.
That's a good idea. So you could start looking on Facebook for groups. Do you think though that if a production, I mean, I would imagine that a production wouldn't thank us if lots of people who've never done a job apply for the job? Would you think that that's the first place to go to get a job? Will people hire somebody from a book if they don't have any experience? What would you think of that? I might throw that question to somebody else. Marc, I might throw that your way.
I would say that maybe But speaking from my own experience, I started off as a runner and kind of worked, and then because I kind of learned when I was in uni that I kind of wanted to do more production-based things, that I kind of learned that over time. I got a week's of work experience at Raise the Roof back in, I think it was about 2019.
Okay.
Actually, it was early 2020. Actually, I remember it because there was notices about cleaning desks and stuff because of this coronavirus thing that no one had heard of yet. So it was about 2020. I done a week's worth of work experience there. And I will say, I think one of the key things, especially if anyone's leaving university, is knowing that you're like knowing how to market yourself. Like you're leaving university, you're like, I'm sorry to say it, but you're not a camera operator, you're not a director, you're a runner. That's essentially like that's the key thing. You might be a runner who knows how to work a camera, you might be a runner who knows how to do this, that, the next thing, but entering into the industry, you start off as a runner, and then it's really just using that time out on shoots to kind of. That's the great thing about doing it, is you get to work with all the different departments. You get to kind of ask questions in the downtime. You get to know things. That I made sure that I was always into contact with the production managers and the people that were planning it to kind of get more information that way.
Great, thanks, Marc. So work experience is kind of a gentle route into getting a sense, maybe asking to shadow in a company, and get a sense of what the roles are, and don't apply for things that you don't have the experience for, because you're possibly giving a sense that you can jump before you can walk, or whatever that expression is. Okay, we've got to 10 past, so I kind of need to get to the questions we're being asked. I think they feed in quite nicely to some of what we're just talking about now. A lot of the questions here are, I'm going to start at the question we've had most recently, which is for Sandy, because I think it jumps into a lot of what other people are asking here. A question for Sandy. What characteristics do you look out for in a runner in order to keep them on or to promote them?
Someone who is a go-getter, someone who's got a can-do attitude, someone who has got a nice smile, a warmth around them, that they just want to just take in as much learning as possible. They want to help people, ask questions. No question is silly to ask. So someone who just shows a willingness and an eagerness, and someone who obviously watches telly. You'd be surprised when people actually come in or do an email, or you're interviewing them and you say, okay, what do you watch? Oh, I don't know. So someone who actually does watch TV.
Thank you. That's a brilliant answer. And I think that's something we haven't really touched on yet, that idea of when you go for an interview, or as it's often called, a chat, for a position like a runner role, that knowing what you've watched or being able to talk about something that particular company has made is very, very useful, and especially something they've made recently and being able to talk about a little bit. Thank you for that, Sandy. Going to jump to our next question in here. Do you have a training whenever you start a particular production job? So I think we have earlier mentioned, people have mentioned software and things like that, but have you been given training when you've gone into any of your jobs? Who on my panel would like to jump in for that? Who'd like to answer that one? Oh, we've got one here from Fola. Thank you, Fola. Let's go.
In case of, let's see, I think it was points of view, in terms of risk assessments for location shoots. So the whole team was, we all sat down for a course on risk assessments, how to identify it and whether it's dynamic or not. So yes, it depends on the production. It depends what's decided in terms of if it's going to be a location shoots, if it's going to be external, as in outside the country, or even just outside the building. That's obviously the head of department, i.e. Sandy, would be the one to decide with management, and then it gets cascaded down to us, and then we attend the course. So yes, you will be given, depending again on the production, you will be sent on a course.
That's lovely. Thanks for that, Fola. Okay, next question on here. Again, thrown to the panel. Would anyone like to answer? How much time do you spend? If anyone's sending in questions, can you put the name of the panelist you'd like to answer as well? How much time do you spend on sets, and which production type roles out of the production office spend the most time on sets?
I would say it really depends. It doesn't really depend on the role. It really depends on the production. For instance, this job that I'm doing just now, I've only been on location once, and that was because it was very last minute. We couldn't find a runner, so I basically had to be the runner. But the job before that, I was production secretary, but it was a travel log show, so we were going to different countries and things like that. And myself and the production manager were on location there. So I would say that it really does depend on the production rather than the role, but it's not very common for a production manager to be on location just because of everything that has to, like, there's so much going on behind the scenes that needs to be dealt with. Production secretary probably will be on the potential on location, again, depending on other availability, what's happening, what's going on. But it really, yeah, it just depends more on the actual production itself rather than the role that you're doing, I would say.
Thank you very much for that, Marc. Quite a few of the questions here, there's, I think what we probably haven't really talked about is the idea of a runner and runners coming in to work in the production office. So we might bring that in a little bit to the next question here. I've had a question, what job titles are suitable for graduates of directing? I think it'd be fair to say we might say to people to go in the direction of runner for that. Will that be something? We're nodding as a panel, so I'm going to say that to you. And in the meantime, can we have a little think panel who'd like to answer this question? What other departments do you interact with on a daily basis? I think, of course, this also answer will depend on whether you're working on scripted or factual or whatever the type of program it is. But the question is, what other departments do you interact with on a daily basis? Do you work much with directors and assistant directors, etc.? Who'd like to answer that one?
I can answer that one. I
Okay.
would say see it as one big team. We're all working on one big team. So we all interact on a daily basis, depending on what the production is. But usually you would be very much dealing with everybody in different departments, different locations on a day-to-day basis. So the likes of the coordinators and the production secretaries here, they're very much speaking to the teams on location. They're speaking to the post house, they're speaking to the producers, the directors, series producer, everybody. Because that's very much the job. You're organising the logistics for everybody on your production.
Brilliant. All big one team. That's lovely. Thanks so much.
And I will say, sorry, could I just add to that? Sorry,
Yep.
I would say as well that communication is key because, like, I think the worst productions I've worked on are the ones that people only get in contact when things go wrong. And so I feel like, you know, a constant communication between all the departments is absolutely crucial to make sure that the show and the production can run as smoothly as possible so that it's not just constant firefighting when things go wrong, so we know before they go wrong that they could go wrong, if that makes sense.
That's lovely. Thanks for that, Marc. Okay, I've got another question from the same person, Lakshmi, studying film studies and Spanish at uni, keen to gain experience in the industry. What advice, what steps should I take once I graduate? Good question. Probably the question a lot of people here in the audience want to ask. What should they do? A lot of people coming up to perhaps graduating in the next three months or so from university. The way the industry stands at the moment, things change all the time. What would you think might be a good first step? Anybody want to jump in and answer that one? Lovely. Robyn's in there. Straight in. Thanks, Robyn.
I think that your first step should be to apply for every single trainee program that you can. There's ScreenSkills, which is nationwide and all the countries, there's your different regions. They also run their own, because that way the production knows that you've already gone through an interview process, and they also will like cater for, they'll say, okay, so we're doing this production, we're going to have a costume trainee, we're going to have an AD trainee, we're going to have an accounts trainee. So like on the ITV period drama that I worked on, every single department had a trainee.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that. That was a great answer, Robyn. Anyone else feel that they wanted to mention anything about what would you do when you graduated? Any kind of quick tips or anything else from anyone else? Can you remember back to those days when before you went to enter the industry, what was a good first step? I'm going to answer in the meantime while I'm waiting, which is I would say prepare yourself a CV, and that when you start to look at what you have on the CV, you yourself will be able to get a sense of what is missing from that. So you're saying you're studying film studies, So already you probably have an interest, but if you're talking about getting into the film and TV industry, maybe have a think about film translating to TV and getting a sense, as Sandy said, of what do you watch, and then maybe watching things and working out what would you like to work on, finding those production companies and targeting yourself at the moment. Also, Spanish could be very useful to you on that top of that CV as well. Because again, you might just be lucky. Somebody might be looking for a Spanish speaker or something. Any other first steps, advice?
I would echo what you said, Kate. Do your research. So Scotland's very small. You know, we don't have that much production. We've got a heck of a lot, you know, in terms of jobs, but it's quite easy to do the research. Do your research, work out what companies are based here, what do they make, and what of those shows are your favorite shows, and then target those companies. Every company pretty much now has got a website. So what websites are you looking at when you do your research that you think I would fit in there, or I like what they're saying on the website? They're trying to sell themselves. They want you to work for them. To work out where you think you fit and then target them. Everyone loves to talk about themselves. Everyone loves it if they feel someone is actually coming to them saying, I love your output. I love your company. I want to work with you. So single them out, make sure you get the right people's names, the shows they work on, and just get in touch saying, can you come in for a chat?
That's lovely. Thank you very much, Sandy. Okay, so Isabel has asked another question that's similar to that, which is trying to get work experience. I think Sandy's just really answered that question, which is target specific people, try and get in touch with people. And there's lots of ways to do that. You might find people on LinkedIn. You could probably work out from an email, from a website of a company, what the email addresses of the people or the company are in. Doing that by yourself really shows initiative as well, and passion, and being the kind of person who's flexible on their feet, which means if you came to work there, you'd be flexible on your feet, trying to find talent and hotels and all the other things that you might need across the roles. Okay, so I think we're going to say done to that question, Isabella. A question for Marc. How many projects have you worked on at the same time? Is it challenging to balance these together?
I think the most I've ever worked on at the one time was 4, but that was like, I wouldn't say it's challenging, especially in production, because the great thing about it is that the shows, like the content of the shows change, but being in production doesn't in the grand scheme of things. You know, a call sheet's a call sheet, a budget's a budget, a release form's a release form. It might look a bit different, it might sound a bit different, but really in the grand scheme of things, the job doesn't change all that much. But yeah, it can be like, it does sound daunting, but it really isn't. If you're especially working in production, that it's the same job at the end of the day. So as long as you don't get them confused, as long as you know what job you're doing this specific role for, and you're not getting that mixed up, and you're not getting your wires crossed that way, I would definitely say that it's simple enough. Yeah.
Multitasking. That's what everybody on this panel is up for. Multitasking team. Good. Okay, so we've been asked about trainee possibilities apart from ScreenSkills. I think we've mentioned a few today. I think there are other trainee schemes. I think the BBC themselves have lots of trainee schemes. In fact, they've launched a few roles today again, trainee schemes. So they come up all the time, both in TV and radio. So any other trainee schemes that we've come across today? I think we might be able to mention, we've mentioned TRC. I know PACT have a diversity training scheme that some of my previous graduates have been successful in. Also, BBC Get In is a great way to jump in and have a look for some of those. So yeah, let's go to one of the final questions on here. When did you first hear of your current role, and what made you decide to pursue it as a career? I think we've kind of answered that actually, across the panel today. And that sense of everybody who's here very much wanted to get into production. What I might ask one or two of the panel though is where do they want to go? Where do they see themselves going? And where do they want to go next? Robyn, I'm going to jump to you because you've mentioned that your trainee scheme is coming to an end at the end of March. What's your pathway? Where do you see yourself going? Are you staying in this area of production accountancy, or where would you like to go next?
So I'm gonna work my way up to be financial controller, and then I want to be a financier. So I want to be the one that then green lights projects.
Fantastic. I love this. I love this vision. This is great. And this is what people need to do, right? We need to choose a point and work towards it. Sandy, would you say that that's something that you've done? Have you, you know, as you've mentioned that you'd come into this from music and that you used your publishing degree. Would you say that a lot of people are on a certain pathway when they come into the production office, or do some people tend to go elsewhere, or are some people clearly more passionate about staying in the production roles? What's your experience?
I think it very much depends. I've seen a lot of people that have known they want to work in telly. They've known very early on that it's telly in some sort, and they don't really know until they then enter the industry, you know, doing what. A lot of people don't realize all these roles in production management. So they come off thinking, okay, I'm going to be a runner and a researcher. And they suddenly realize that there's so many more roles available to them. And I think a lot of people have come in from other industries, whether it's working in a shop or a cafe or a restaurant, and have realized actually within production management that there is these roles and their skills are so transferable that they can then just come in and, you know, come in at a kind of a medium level as opposed to starting at the very beginning. So I think it very much depends.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. You'll be pleased and proud to hear that we've answered all the questions that we were asked in our chat today. So I think that brings us to a bit of a sense of coming to the end of the session. I think we've had a really great overview, and I think for a lot of people listening today, a sense of that differentiation between a production runner, a production secretary, a production coordinator, a production management assistant, a head of production, and that there's so much within those roles and of those people working together as a team, and also how important it is if you've got a sense of something you love doing. Robyn's really given us a great sense of that in accountancy, that passion, that you can bring that forward. So I might just go around to my panel and say thank you to all of you, first of all, for all that you've done for us today. It's been really brilliant. And I appreciate a lot of you are literally on working and will go straight back to work the minute this panel is over today. There's some lovely thank yous coming in there as well. But I just wanted to maybe ask each of you for a tip, or kind of what would you know, what's your tip that you've got? Is there a challenge you had to overcome, or is there something that if you were starting all over again, you would do now? And it could be something very practical, like what to call yourself in your CV, or what to ask about in a job interview, or any tip that you've got for us would be really lovely. I might go around that panel. Isha, what would your tip? What's your golden take-home tip?
Perseverance. Don't give up. It's hard to get in, but once you're in, and you meet so many people. Just keep in touch with them. I'm really lazy and find it really hard to keep in touch with people, but keep in touch with people. Go out for coffees with them. Keep looking out there. There's always something. So don't be disheartened. There's plenty for everyone. Yes.
Lovely.
You can do it.
And that's great, Isha, because yes, there's plenty for everyone. You might not get one job, but you might get another job somewhere else a week later, or even in the same company, but a different role. Thank you so much. Robyn, what's your golden tip?
I would say be prepared to start right at the bottom and work your way up, and do so always being respectful of everyone, because you never know who that person will be on your next job. And enthusiasm, and even if it's a horrible production, it's not forever. It's in a few weeks, it'll be over. So keep smiling and just go through it and look forward to the next one, because some of the jobs are horrid, but most of them are amazing.
That's great. That's great. And there's something to learn from all of those. I think when we find a challenge in a situation, we learn about ourselves as well, don't we? And how to work with others and how to overcome those things. Okay, who hasn't answered this yet? Sandy, what's your golden nugget tip?
Golden nugget. Be kind, ask lots of questions, find your tribe of people that you're all in the same boat and you can help each other with advice and tips. Get a mentor that you feel that you can ask silly questions to. No questions silly, but if you've maybe got a safe place, safe person you can ask questions to. People are always willing to help people, because it is tricky, as Isha says, you know, getting in, but once you're in, you're in. So yeah.
That's lovely. Thank you very much. Marc, what's yours?
Mine would be, I think, always be proactive and not reactive. I feel like, especially on TV, I think always try and know your next move. Try and always have a plan things always go wrong in TV, things always have to change, but if you've got a plan to begin with, it makes life a lot easier. And just be a good person to work with, essentially. I think that's the key thing, because people talk, people remember you, and you don't want to be the person that was a nightmare on a shoot or in the production office. You want to be the person that people want to work with.
That's great. And last but not least of those, Fola, give us you've got 30 seconds, Fola.
Just basically continue, keep knocking at the door. There will be a job for you. Get to know everybody. As Marc says, always enjoy every single moment of it, because you never know. The next job might not be great, but within that, find something amazing that you're going to enjoy out of that to take on to the next job that's going to be amazing again. So that's my point.
That's great advice. Thank you very much. So I've written down a few things that you've said. Watch TV. So if you're going to a company, know what they make. If you're going to a scripted company, watch scripted. If it's a factual company, watch factual, etc. Research and target particular companies. Be kind, be proactive, ask people to go for a coffee, bring them a coffee, make friends, continue those connections with the people you've met, and be open to new opportunities. And speaking of new opportunities, I'm going to pass you over to the lovely Victoria Trachy from ScreenSkills, who's brought us here together for this opportunity today. Thank you, Victoria.
No, thank you, everybody, and thank you for all of our contributors today. It's been a really good session, and I hope you got so much out of that. I would like to say, just embrace the fact that not everything goes to plan, but always do it with a smile. So I'm going to end on that note, and thank you ever so much, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.